My name is Mia Caldwell. I'm 33, and I watched my stepmother stand in a Houston ICU hallway with mascara running, telling the doctor, "Let him go, that's what he would want." I hadn't spoken to my dad in years, but when the hospital dug through his wallet, my number was the first thing they found. Not hers, mine, with a handwritten note that said, "Call her first." Tessa thought she could play grieving wife and sign away his life before anyone questioned it. So I opened my leather portfolio, slid one document across the counter and said, "No, you don't have the authority." Her face went white, because my dad signed this 5 years ago, in secret. Before I go on, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been treated like the extra child, the one who stayed quiet, did everything right, and still got pushed aside when family decisions were made. If you've ever had a step-family rewrite history like you weren't even there, stay with me. What happened next wasn't just about money. It was about who really had the right to decide. I didn't grow up thinking my family was broken. From the outside, we looked like the kind of suburban Houston household people pointed to and said, "They've got it together." A 2-story house with beige siding, a lawn my dad mowed every Saturday morning, a flag on the porch we only took down during storms. My mum, Rachel, kept everything running quietly. She worked part-time, packed my lunches, remembered everyone's birthdays, and somehow made the house feel warm, even when the AC was blasting through August. When she got sick, that warmth vanished fast. I was 13 when the word cancer entered our kitchen like an uninvited guest. It showed up in whispers at night, in hospital appointments my dad said were routine, in the way my mum started wearing scarves indoors. I remember sitting in the back seat of our car outside Memorial, watching the automatic doors slide open and closed, thinking hospitals were the loudest, quiet places on earth. Machines beeping, shoes squeaking, voices always lowered like the building itself demanded grief be kept under control. When my mum died, the house didn't fall apart. It went silent. My dad, Grant, didn't cry the way I expected. He didn't scream or throw things or collapse. He just emptied. He left the TV on all the time, volume too loud, like silence might swallow him whole. He started forgetting small things, where he put his keys, whether he'd eaten. I learned to microwave dinners for myself, learned that grief doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a man staring at a blank wall at midnight. That's when Tessa arrived. She didn't move in right away. At first, she was just a friend from church. She brought casseroles wrapped in foil and talked about God's plan with a voice that sounded reassuring instead of preachy. She laughed easily. She touched my dad's arm when she spoke to him, like she was grounding him to the world again. I didn't resent her for that. Back then, I was grateful someone could make him smile. But Tessa didn't just fill space. She rearranged it. Photos changed places. My mum's picture on the mantel disappeared one afternoon, replaced by a decorative candle. When I asked where it went, Tessa smiled and said, "I put it somewhere safe." She never said where. My dad didn't notice, or pretended not to. I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over a frame. Then Cole and Addie entered the picture. They were loud, confident, and completely at home in a house that had once felt like mine. Cole was a year older than me, tall, already sure the world would bend to him eventually. Addie was younger, always holding a phone, always performing even when no one was watching. Tessa introduced them like prizes. My kids. She never corrected herself. At first, the favoritism was subtle. Cole broke a lamp, roughhousing in the living room. Tessa laughed it off. I accidentally scratched the car pulling out of the driveway and got a lecture about responsibility. Addie forgot her homework and it was, "Kids will be kids." I got a B+ one semester and heard, "You could have tried harder." I learned quickly how to survive. Stay quiet, be helpful, don't take up space. By high school, I was the reliable one. I did my homework at the kitchen counter, while Tessa and my dad talked in low voices at the table. I cleaned up after dinner. I watched Cole get praised for showing up, while I only got noticed when something went wrong. When relatives came over, Tessa told stories about her kids' achievements. If someone asked about me, she'd pause, smile thinly, and say, "Mia's very independent." Independent was another word for invisible. I told myself things would change when I got older, when I went to college, when I proved I was successful, stable, someone worth respecting. I believed adulthood would level the field. That logic made sense everywhere except inside my family. College came with student loans, late nights, and the constant hum of anxiety about money. I worked internships, waited tables, learned to budget down to the dollar. When I got my first real job in finance, I called my dad. He said he was proud. Tessa said, "That's nice," and changed the subject. Every Christmas after that felt more staged. Matching pajamas for photos I wasn't asked to join. Gifts for me that were practical. Socks, a planner. While Cole unwrapped electronics and Addie got jewelry. I laughed along. I told myself none of this mattered. Families were complicated. Everyone had flaws. Thanksgiving 2017 was when I stopped believing that. The house in River Oaks was packed. Tessa had outdone herself. Place cards, candles, a table so long it felt like a boardroom. Church friends, neighbours, cousins I barely recognised. People who didn't know me, but would remember what they saw. Tessa stood up with her wine glass midway through dinner. "I just want to say how grateful I am for this family," she said. "Grant has 2 kids, Cole and Addie, and they've been such a blessing." The room hummed with polite smiles. I waited. My dad kept carving the turkey. His eyes stayed on the knife. Tessa glanced at me like she'd forgotten something, then added, almost kindly, "Mia is from a complicated chapter. We don't really count her." No one said a word. I stood up, pushed my chair in, and walked out. No yelling, no tears, just the sound of my heels on hardwood and the front door closing behind me. I drove back to Montrose in the dark, hands tight on the wheel, telling myself one thing over and over. If I stay, this will never stop. That was the last time I sat at that table. After Thanksgiving, I didn't make a dramatic announcement. I didn't call my dad to explain why I left or demand an apology. I just stopped showing up. No more holidays. No more quick visits. I told myself distance was temporary, that things would cool down, that someone would eventually reach out and say, "That wasn't okay." No one did. At first, my dad called a few times. Unknown numbers. Missed calls that popped up while I was in meetings or driving. I assumed it was Tessa using a different phone, trying to pull me back into something I wasn't ready to face. I let them go to voicemail. I never listened. I thought silence was the only boundary I had left. Work became my refuge. I poured everything into it. Early mornings, late nights, spreadsheets that made sense when people didn't. I moved up faster than I expected. Analyst to senior analyst, then FP and A manager. I rented a clean, quiet apartment in Montrose, close enough to downtown to feel connected, far enough from River Oaks to breathe. I built a life that didn't require anyone's approval. From a distance, I heard things through other people. A cousin mentioned Cole was helping your dad with the business now. An old neighbour said Tessa was hosting church brunches every other Sunday. Someone casually asked why I hadn't come to Addie's graduation party, as if the invitation had ever existed. I smiled, changed the subject, and kept my answers vague. What I didn't know, what no one told me, was that while I was learning how to stand on my own, my dad was quietly unraveling. I found out later that the house got quieter again once I left, that the TV stayed on late, that my dad started keeping lists so he wouldn't forget things, that he argued with Tessa more than anyone realised. According to Evan Pierce, my dad showed up at his office one afternoon, looking exhausted, not sick, just worn down in a way that scared him. Evan told me my dad didn't come in to talk about money at first. He came in to talk about trust. He told Evan he felt like a guest in his own house. Those decisions were being made for him, not with him. Cole had started talking about the business like it was already his. Tessa kept bringing up simplifying things and making sure the right people were protected. And somewhere in those conversations, my name came up. My dad admitted he hadn't spoken to me in years. He said it like a confession. He told Evan he didn't blame me, that after Thanksgiving he'd been too ashamed to call from his own number, that he'd tried anyway, more than once. That was when he asked about power of attorney, not because he was sick, not because he planned to disappear, but because he was afraid of what would happen if he couldn't speak for himself one day. Afraid that silence, his favourite defence mechanism, would finally cost him everything. Evan said my dad was very clear. He didn't want Tessa making medical decisions if things went bad. He didn't want Cole touching the finances unchecked. He wanted someone who wouldn't panic, wouldn't perform, wouldn't rush to protect appearances. He wanted someone who would do the hard, boring, correct thing. He wanted me. So, 5 years ago, while I was busy rebuilding my life, my dad signed papers in a quiet law office downtown. Medical power of attorney. Durable financial power of attorney. Witnesses. Notary. Everything done clean, deliberate, and legal. He didn't tell Tessa. He didn't tell Cole. He didn't even tell me. He went home and kept pretending. That part hurts the most. Because while I was learning to live without them, my dad was still living inside a family that didn't really belong to him anymore. He stayed because he was afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over, afraid that if he pushed back, he'd lose the only version of family he had left. I didn't know any of this when the hospital called. All I knew that morning was that the man I hadn't spoken to in years was unconscious in an ICU, and somehow, against all logic, I was the first person he wanted notified. That my number, my name, was still important enough to carry in his wallet. I sat in my apartment that night, after Thanksgiving 2017, staring at my phone, telling myself I was done chasing people who didn't choose me. What I didn't realize was that my dad had been trying, quietly and clumsily, to choose me back. And by the time I finally understood that, he was already lying in a hospital bed, unable to say a word. That's what makes the next part harder, because when I walked into that ICU waiting room, I wasn't just stepping back into my family's orbit. I was stepping into a fight that had been building for years. One I didn't even know I was holding the winning hand in. And Tessa was about to realize that silence, finally, wasn't on her side. The ICU waiting room smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. It was barely 8 in the morning, but the lights were already too bright, the kind that made everyone look tired and guilty at the same time. I walked in still wearing my work blazer, my laptop bag hanging from one shoulder, like I'd accidentally taken a wrong turn on my way to the office. They were already there. Tessa sat in the corner closest to the windows, dressed in black from head to toe. Not casual black, funeral black. Her posture was perfect, hands folded in her lap, a tissue pinched delicately between her fingers like a prop she knew how to use well. Cole stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight, scrolling through his phone with the expression of someone annoyed they'd been inconvenienced. Addie hovered a few feet away, her phone angled just right as she whispered into it, eyes glossy, voice trembling on cue. "Praying for my stepdad," she murmured. "Please send love." I stopped at the nurse's station before anyone noticed me. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I'm here for Grant Caldwell," I said. "I'm his daughter." The nurse, a woman in her 50s with tired but kind eyes, typed my name into her computer. She glanced at the screen, then back at me. "Mia Caldwell," she said. "You're listed as his primary emergency contact." Behind me, the air shifted. "What?" Tessa's voice cut through the room, sharp and sudden. "What do you mean by emergency contact?" I didn't turn around. The nurse frowned slightly. "That's who the patient designated, ma'am." "That's not possible," Tessa said, already standing. "I'm his wife." "I understand," the nurse replied calmly. "But the patient listed Miss Caldwell. We're required to contact her first." For a split second, I saw something flash across Tessa's face. Not grief, not confusion, calculation. Cole didn't bother lowering his voice. "Who called you?" he snapped, stepping toward me. "This is a family matter." I finally turned to face him. He was close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive and aggressive. "The hospital called me," I said, "because my name was in his wallet." "That's impossible," he said. "Mom would know." "Maybe," I said, "or maybe there's a lot she doesn't know." Tessa recovered quickly. She always did. She placed a hand on Cole's arm, a silent command to step back, then walked toward the nurse's station with her best grieving wife smile. "There must be a mistake," she said softly. "Grant wouldn't exclude me from something like that." The nurse looked uncomfortable. "I can only tell you what's in the system." That was when Dr. Andrew Park appeared. He was tall, calm, and painfully professional, the kind of doctor who delivered bad news so many times it no longer showed on his face. He introduced himself and asked me to follow him into a small consultation room down the hall. Tessa moved to stand up. "I should be there," she said. Dr. Park hesitated, then looked at me. "Ms. Caldwell?" I nodded. "I'd like to hear this first." The room was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner. Dr. Park pulled up scans on a screen, grey and black shapes that meant nothing to me until he explained. "Your father suffered a major ischemic stroke around 5:30 this morning," he said. "There's significant blockage. He's currently in a medically induced coma to reduce swelling." My chest tightened. What are his options? If we perform an endovascular intervention within the next 48 hours, his chances of meaningful recovery are around 60 to 65%, he said. Without it, the risk of severe disability, or worse, increases significantly. "And the surgery?" I asked. "It's complex," Dr. Park said, "and expensive. More importantly, your father can't consent right now. We need authorization from someone with legal decision-making power." I already knew what was coming. "Does he have a medical power of attorney?" he asked. I thought about the note in his wallet. Call her first. "I need to make a phone call," I said. Outside the room, Tessa was pacing, phone pressed to her ear, voice low and urgent. I stepped into a quiet hallway and called Evan Pierce. He answered on the second ring. "Mia," he said, "I've been expecting this call." My grip tightened around the phone. "You knew he was in the hospital." "I have alerts set up," Evan said. "Your father asked me to." I leaned against the wall as a nurse hurried past. "Tell me what he signed." "Medical power of attorney," Evan said, "and durable financial power of attorney, both naming you, signed 5 years ago, notarized, witnessed, perfectly valid." The world narrowed to the sound of my own breathing. "Why?" I whispered. "Because he didn't trust anyone else to do the right thing," Evan said. "And because Tessa and Cole had been pressuring him to change his will. He was scared." I closed my eyes. "There's more," Evan continued. "If Tessa realizes what's happening, she'll move fast. Emergency guardianship, court filings, delays. And delays are dangerous right now." "How fast?" I asked. "Today," he said. "Possibly within hours." I looked back toward the waiting room. Tessa was still on the phone, her free hand slicing through the air as she spoke. "Evan," I said, "send everything to the hospital. Now." "It's already on its way," he replied. "And Mia, be careful. This is where people stop pretending." I hung up and walked back toward the nurse's station, just as Tessa ended her call. Her eyes locked onto mine. "What did you do?" she asked. "I'm doing exactly what my father asked me to do," I said. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't over." I believed her. And that's when my phone buzzed again, this time from a number I recognized. "The bank," I answered, already bracing myself. "Miss Caldwell," the woman said carefully, "I'm calling to inform you that account access for Grant Caldwell has just been updated. All outgoing transactions now require authorization from the designated representative." Across the room, Tessa looked down at her phone, and for the first time that morning, she didn't look in control at all. Tessa stared at her phone like it had betrayed her. For a moment, she didn't say anything. The performance slipped just enough for me to see what lived underneath it. Panic. Real panic. The kind that doesn't know which mask to grab first. "What did the bank say?" Cole asked, stepping closer to her. Tessa lowered the phone slowly. "There's been a temporary restriction," she said, choosing her words too carefully. "Probably a mistake." I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. The nurse at the station cleared her throat. "Miss Caldwell, Hospital Legal, has confirmed receipt of documents from Evan Pierce's office. Patient Services will be meeting with you shortly." Tessa snapped her head toward the nurse. "What documents?" The nurse hesitated, eyes flicking to me, then back to her screen. Power of attorney paperwork. The word landed hard. That's not possible, Tessa said, louder now. Grant wouldn't do something like that without telling me. I met her eyes. Apparently he would. Cole stepped forward, his voice rising. You can't just show up after years and take over. You walked away. You don't get to decide anything now. I felt the familiar urge to defend myself, to explain Thanksgiving, the years of erasure, the silence that wasn't indifference but survival. Instead, I did what my job had trained me to do. I said nothing. That silence seemed to enrage him more than any argument could have. Say something, he snapped. You think you're better than us? Before I could respond, a woman with a hospital badge approached. Nina Okafor, Patient Services. Her presence changed the temperature in the room immediately. Miss Caldwell, she said to me, calm and firm, may I speak with you privately? Tessa was already shaking her head. Whatever you're discussing involves me. I'm his wife. Nina's tone didn't shift. We'll address that shortly. She led me into a small office off the main corridor. Glass walls, neutral art, a space designed to look transparent while keeping everything controlled. We've reviewed the documents from Mr. Pierce, Nina said, sliding a folder across the table. Both medical and durable financial power of attorney appear valid under Texas law. We're completing verification, but as of now, you are the authorized decision-maker. I let the words settle. There's something else, she continued. Mrs. Caldwell has contacted an attorney. He's already reached out to our legal department, raising concerns about undue influence and estrangement. Of course she had. They're requesting an ethics review, Nina said. That doesn't negate your authority, but it can complicate things if this turns adversarial. Complicate how? I asked. Delays, Nina said plainly. Media involvement, court petitions, guardianship filings. I thought about Dr. Park's words. 48 hours. What do you need from me? I asked. Composure, Nina said, and documentation, which, based on what I'm seeing, you have. She paused, then added, Security will be present for any formal meetings. This isn't unusual. It felt unusual. When we stepped back into the waiting area, the scene had shifted. Tessa was no longer alone. A man in a tailored grey suit stood beside her, briefcase in hand, silver hair, a polished smile that didn't reach his eyes. Howard Vance. He looked like someone who charged by the minute and enjoyed it. This is getting out of hand, he was saying as Nina approached. My client is being sidelined in decisions about her own husband. Nina didn't flinch. We're following hospital policy and state law. Howard turned to me. Miss Caldwell, I'm Howard Vance. I represent Mrs. Caldwell. I assumed, I said. We'll be filing for emergency guardianship today, he said smoothly. Given your prolonged estrangement, there are serious concerns about your suitability. Cole smirked. Addie had moved closer, phone raised again, eyes darting between us. I suggest, Howard continued, that you step back and let this be handled appropriately. I thought about my father lying unconscious upstairs, about the note in his wallet, about 5 years of paperwork done quietly, deliberately. No, I said. The word was simple, final. Howard blinked, then smiled thinly. Then this will get unpleasant. Then we're already there, I replied. That was when Addie's phone slipped. Not literally. She adjusted her grip, angling it just right. I caught the reflection in the glass wall behind her. A red dot in the corner of the screen. She was live streaming. Nina noticed it at the same time I did. Miss, she said sharply, recording is not permitted in this area. Addie's eyes widened, then hardened. I'm just documenting what's happening to our family. Howard stepped in quickly. This is a public hospital. It's a restricted medical area, Nina said. Turn it off, now. Addie hesitated. I raised my hand. It's fine. Everyone turned to look at me. If she wants to record, I said calmly, let her. Tessa's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Letting the truth sit in the open, I said. For once. The tension was thick enough to taste. Nina studied me for a moment, then nodded slightly. We'll proceed with a formal meeting at 10 a.m., she said. Conference room, VIP floor, all parties present. Howard checked his watch. We'll be there. As they walked away, Tessa lagged behind just long enough to hiss, You think this makes you powerful? I met her gaze. I think it makes me prepared. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You don't know what you're walking into. I watched her disappear down the corridor, surrounded by her lawyer, her son, her daughter still clutching a phone like a weapon. She was wrong about one thing. I knew exactly what I was walking into, because while they were building a case around noise and optics, I was holding paperwork, timestamps, witnesses, and a clock that was finally working in my favor. And at 10 o'clock, they were all going to find out just how badly they'd underestimated silence. The conference room on the VIP floor was colder than the rest of the hospital. The air conditioning turned just a little too high. A long polished table cut the space in half, water glasses already set out, a box of tissues placed dead center like someone had planned for tears. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, sunlight bouncing off glass buildings that didn't care what was about to happen inside this room. I took the chair at one end of the table. Tessa sat at the other, perfectly arranged, flanked by Howard Vance on one side and Cole on the other. Addie hovered slightly behind them, phone already in her hand, pretending to text while she angled the camera just enough to catch everything. Dr. Brooke Halstead sat close to Tessa, her posture soft, empathetic, ready to translate emotion into accusations. Nina Okafor stood near the door with her tablet. Dr. Park leaned against the window, arms crossed, saying nothing. The clock on the wall ticked. Tessa started first. I've been Grant's wife for 20 years, she said, voice trembling at exactly the right moments. I've taken care of him through every hardship, his business struggles, his grief. His health is scary. And now, after 8 years of complete silence, his daughter shows up with paperwork none of us have ever seen and tries to take control. Howard nodded gravely. We believe there's a serious question of undue influence here. Miss Caldwell was estranged for nearly a decade. That alone raises concerns about her understanding of Mr. Caldwell's current wishes. Dr. Halstead leaned forward. In my experience, situations like this often involve unresolved emotional trauma, guilt, a desire for control disguised as care. I listened without interrupting. Cole crossed his arms. She walked out on us, he said. She didn't answer his calls. She wasn't around when things were hard. Now suddenly she's here. Addie sniffed loudly. My followers are devastated, she added. They can't believe someone would do this to their own family. I looked at the blinking red dot on her phone. Thousands of people watched, thinking they knew who I was. Howard turned to me. Ms. Caldwell, do you have anything to say before we formally request the hospital suspend recognition of these documents, pending court review? I placed my leather portfolio on the table. Yes, I said, I do. The room went still. I opened the portfolio slowly, deliberately. No shaking hands, no rush. I pulled out a single printed email and placed it in front of me. This is an email from my father, I said, sent 5 years ago, 3 days before he signed the power of attorney documents. Tessa's eyes flicked to the paper, then away. The subject line reads, For when I can't speak. I looked up. Would you like me to read it? Howard hesitated. We'll need to verify. The metadata is intact, I said. It's already been verified by hospital legal. I read anyway. I read the part where my father admitted he'd failed me. The part where he said Tessa and Cole were pressuring him to change his will. The part where he said he didn't trust anyone else to make decisions for him if he couldn't speak. When I finished, the room was silent. Cole's face had gone pale. Dr. Halstead looked down at her notes, suddenly very interested in her pen. I pulled out the next document. This is the medical power of attorney, I said. Signed, notarized, and witnessed 5 years ago. Then the next. And this is the durable financial power of attorney. Same date, same witnesses. Nina nodded. Both documents have been verified by our legal department. Howard leaned forward. Even so, documents can be challenged. Of course they can, I said calmly, which is why I brought this. I nodded toward the door. Nina opened it and Alyssa Grant stepped inside. Tessa's head snapped up. What is she doing here? Alyssa didn't look at her. She looked at me. I managed Grant's properties for over 10 years, Alyssa said, including the River Oaks house. There are security cameras in the garage and safe room. I slid my phone across the table. A short video played. Tessa's voice filled the room, sharp and angry, talking about finding the folder and doing this the hard way if Grant didn't sign what she wanted. Addie gasped. Cole swore under his breath. Tessa stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. This is a setup, she snapped. You're twisting everything. Howard didn't move. He was staring at the screen. I think that's enough, Dr. Park said quietly. Tessa turned to him. You can't let her do this. She's taking everything we built. The words hung in the air. We built, not he built. Nina looked up from her tablet. For the record, the hospital recognizes Mia Caldwell as the authorized decision-maker for Grant Caldwell's medical care and finances, effective immediately. I closed my portfolio. I'm approving the surgery, I said, looking at Dr. Park. As soon as your team is ready. He nodded. We'll proceed. I turned back to Nina. Please update the approved visitor list. Of course, she said. Who would you like to include? I looked at Tessa, at Cole, at Addie still holding her phone. Just me. The security officers stepped into the room. Ma'am, one of them said to Tessa, we're going to have to escort you out of the VIP floor. Tessa stared at me, fury and disbelief twisting her face. You think this is over? She hissed. I met her eyes. No, I said quietly. I think it's finally started. The hallway outside the conference room was silent after they were gone. No shouting, no dramatic collapse, just the echo of heels moving away and the soft click of a door closing behind security. I stood there for a moment longer than I needed to, my hands resting on the leather portfolio like it was the only solid thing left in the building. Dr. Park touched my arm lightly. We'll prep the OR, he said. You made the right call. I nodded, but my focus had already shifted. Because Tessa hadn't lost, she'd been exposed. And people like her don't disappear when they're exposed. They regroup. That night, after visiting hours ended, Nina met me in a small administrative office. She slid another folder across the table, her expression unreadable. There's something you should know, she said. Mrs. Caldwell filed a preliminary petition for emergency guardianship before the meeting. It won't go anywhere now, but it means this will move into probate court territory. I exhaled slowly. I expected that. There's more, Nina added. Your father has a safe deposit box listed at First National. It's flagged with instructions to be opened only if he's incapacitated or deceased. The authorization name on file is yours. I felt the shift in my chest. Don't panic, not fear, focus. Evan Pierce confirmed it later that night. Grant updated that instruction 2 years ago, he said. He told me, if things blow up, Mia will know what to do. I didn't open the box. Not yet. Some truths are more powerful when they stay sealed a little longer. Upstairs, my father lay unconscious, machines breathing for him, his life balanced on careful decisions and timing. Down here, paperwork was already moving, petitions being drafted, narratives being built. They thought today was a battle. It wasn't. It was proof of concept. They'd spent years erasing me socially. Now I was standing where it counted, legally, procedurally, and visibly. And the next time we met, it wouldn't be in a hospital. It would be in court, with the box open. If you've ever been pushed aside by your own family, treated like you didn't matter until money or control was on the line, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment and tell me what you would have done in my place. Would you have walked away or fought back? If this story felt uncomfortably familiar, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. These aren't just stories about inheritance. They're about power, silence, and the moment someone finally says enough.